Thanks, everybody. I'm Angie Britt. I'm the VP of Advanced Products for CTAM. Most of you know me. I work with many of you. I work with many of these. Oh, you guys look really tall now. Work with many of these gentlemen. So it's a pleasure to be here, and we're really happy to be sharing with you what's happening in the industry around TV everywhere today. Before we dive in, I'm going to pop a question to each of you. Everyone can see your faces and your titles up there, so just kind of raise your hand and say who you are and tell us real quickly what your latest TV Everywhere consumption experience was, whether it's content, platform, or location. All the way down at the end.
We don't have microphones.
We'll have to pass around.
Real quickly, we stood up Showtime Anytime this year, so we thought that was a pretty cool release, bringing them to the 10-foot experience.
Okay.
My latest TV Everywhere experience was watching the Time Warner cable application at home.
Okay. Notice he didn't tell us what, but that's okay.
I was channel surfing.
Okay.
I was actually watching the Monday Night Football game on Watch ESPN on my iPad last night while checking my fantasy team and squeaking by into the playoffs.
I was watching Simpsons World on FXX on their new app on desktop.
Likewise, I was watching the Time Warner Cable app on Sunday night, watching Sunday Night Football.
Great. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Now you know a little bit more about them, although they didn't really go very risque. So I'm going to real quickly go through some of the activities that CTAM and its member companies have been working on over the last 12 to 18 months. The slide that you see here is comprised of our board members as well as board-appointed subject matter experts around TV Everywhere. They ask us to get focused on TV Everywhere for the next 18 to 24 to 36 months because it really does drive the value proposition of the pay TV model. So that's what we've been doing, working with content providers, MSOs, as well as cable companies. We've done a couple of waves of tracking studies for consumers that most of you have seen. When we started with this, it was at 47% in April, and then in the latest tracking study, it's gone up to over 50%. So we are making headway as far as unaided awareness is concerned. And then if we look at usage, clicking here forever, that's going to build on its own. We started at 43%. In October, we went to 49% in our tracking study. Now, this is cable subscribers only, panel of 600, 18 to 64 demographic. Our goal by the end of the year is 55% awareness, so we believe we're well on our way to achieving that goal. Another one of the more important factors that we have learned here is the value proposition that the consumer finds from TV Everywhere with both their cable company and their content provider, especially for that vulnerable consumer. They really see the opportunity to consume TV Everywhere as an increase in their subscription model, and therefore it helps us track those millennials and those really heavy TV Everywhere users. So when we're concerned about the over-the-top providers, TV Everywhere will help us maintain and sustain our subscription model. So of course the key takeaways here are that centralized messaging or common messaging makes a big difference. It resonates with the consumer. TV Everywhere is a value add to the subscription model, and it does help us track some of those vulnerable consumers. Now let's talk just a little bit about what we've been focused on the user experience. Year one, we focused very much on the sign-in page and all of the activities associated with sign-in. That's down to the very simple language of using sign-in as opposed to login, iconography, co-branding, the placement of the sign-in field. Several of you guys have been working with us on that. Everything that we have recommended has been based upon consumer research. And so it's everything you see here can be found at ctamtve.com. We've documented all the recommendations. They're available for open consumption and use, and we encourage everyone to go in and take a look at those recommendations based upon either CTAM research or research that we've gotten from our member partners. And now let's talk, phase 2. We're working on phase 2 UX recommendations. Much more complicated, really diving into that experience around home-based authentication, persistent authentication, time to live, definitely working with a lot of our technology partners as well as the OATC and other organizations to make this happen. But Adobe, Freewheel, everyone's engaged with that work. All right. Again, this is just the kind of a synopsis of what you'll find on the ctamtve.com site. I do encourage you to go there and check things out. And now let's talk a bit about awareness. Many of you may have read very recently, perhaps as early as yesterday, about the CTAM Marketing Communications Initiative. That's basically building off of what every other company is doing. So if you think about Fox's Stream It and Dream It and some of the other TV Everywhere programs, what we're doing is an overlay on top of that, using social media, earned media, bloggers, et cetera, to drive awareness of the TV Everywhere experience or the category name. So here's our core value proposition, that there's already TV Everywhere out there. It's part of your subscription. There's tons of content available, and all you have to do is sign in. So the theme of the campaign is kind of fun. So let's imagine that you're on a really bad date. I'm sure these gentlemen have never had a bad date, but if you are, and it's really bad, you could be watching Game of Thrones. Or let's say you've got a really bad conference call. Some of these guys that are on CTAM conference calls say that. You could be watching March Madness. And you can see how this theme will play across all types of content, whether it's sports, movies, et cetera. So it's a great overlay. We've only been into the initiative 3 weeks. We've got 5 million unique, reach of 5 million uniques with 99 million impressions in just 3 weeks. So it's already been successful, and we're really excited about it. We'll continue this campaign into the new year. We're also going to look at another tentpole type campaign that we will do in July or August of next year. So that's a really quick update on what CTAM has been working on. So I'm going to dive in here now and let our panelists have a bit of the floor and ask each of you gentlemen, if you would, to share with this group in your companies or your organizations what's been the biggest achievement or accomplishment or advancement in TV Everywhere that you've delivered or experienced over the last year. Evan, may I start with you?
Sure. So A&E Networks, which our main networks are A&E, History, and Lifetime. We got into the TV Everywhere space. We launched our first app on the iPad in December of 2012. But I think, so we've been at it less than 2 years now, or just about 2 years. But what's happened in the last year has really been the emergence of over-the-top for us. We launched on Roku in January. We launched on Apple TV in April. We launched on Xbox and Amazon Fire as well. And we're seeing about 20 to 25% of our digital video views are coming over the top now, with Roku and Apple TV really being the strongest. So the emergence there, it happened a lot quicker than we thought. 60% of our digital video views are coming through TV Everywhere apps now. And again, then over the top is a significant and rising portion of that.
So if you're not familiar with Freewheel, we're an ad management platform. We're used by we're 3 of the top broadcasters, about 80% of the standard cable channel lineup, as well as a lot of the cable and satellite providers. And they're using us to monetize their video content in IP environments and increasingly other environments. And I think what we've seen is that TV Everywhere is, in the past year, really arrived. So just in the interest of throwing some stats out at you, we've seen about 30% growth year over year in total ad views for premium video. And 30% is a good number if you think about the relative flat growth in linear ratings and dollars. 30% is a really good number. But to take that even a step further, we look at live inventory. We saw 200% plus growth in live streaming across our platform. And that's from companies like ESPN, Fox, Turner. So we're seeing a lot more live sports just coming into these environments. And then the last number I would throw out is authentication. So a user entering their credentials to engage with content online. We saw just about 400% growth year over year. So in the past year, we've just seen a lot more content behind that authentication wall. And this is premium content that you're seeing on your TV. You're now seeing it in an IP environment. So for us, this is just, the past year's really been the first year where we've really seen, I think, TV Everywhere arrive.
So for Disney and ESPN, the past year we've continued our focus in 3 pillars. 1, increasing distribution. 2, increasing ubiquity across all platforms. And 3, just continuing to enhance the fan or user experience across our watch products. So from a distribution perspective, we launched with Dish this past year, so now we have affiliate deals with 9 of the top 10 top operators across the country for Watch ESPN. And now it's distributed in over 75 million homes. And then with respect to platform ubiquity, we recently launched, similar to A&E, on Fire TV, Fire Stick, and Chromecast, which now adds to the list of Xbox, Xbox One, Apple TV, Roku, smartphone tablets, and PCs. And then in terms of enhancing the fan experience, that's something that we're really focused on. We don't want to keep rolling out year after year the same products. So thinking about how we can improve the fan experience. On Watch ESPN on Apple TV, we launched conference channels where we're curating content from each conference in a way where a consumer can easily access that content. If I'm a Florida State fan, I'm interested in ACC content, so it's easily accessible. And then across our other watch products, Watch ABC Family just launched this past year, so now that joins our portfolio with live and on-demand content available on an authenticated basis. And Watch ABC and Watch Disney Watch ABC and the 3 Watch Disney services, they all went through a redesign and added more features and functionality. Watch ABC has more social integration, and Watch Disney, we added games, we added access to Radio Disney, as well as introducing a block of Disney Junior and Espanol. So that's the first time we did that. So that's a little bit of a snapshot of what we did this past year.
I'm Noah Levine from Adobe, and for those of you that aren't familiar with Adobe, we have a wide set of solutions targeted to television programmers, cable operators, satellite operators, and over-the-top providers. Our solutions target the ability to solve device fragmentation, video playback, whether that's video on demand, linear or live, across theoretically any IP-connected devices. But since we're talking about television here, a lot of this is the family jewels. And so the family jewels require authentication. They require content protection. On certain devices, they require hardware root of trust. And so we not only have video playback solutions, we have studio quality content protection technologies. We're the leading TV Everywhere authentication platform in North America, and so play a role with a lot of these topics and companies that have spoken. And then we're also increasingly playing a significant role in the monetization and advertising side of things with ad insertion. So this year we've had some great success. We are now working with DirecTV and Time Warner Cable on top of the Comcast Xfinity TV Everywhere platform, and we're working with Turner Broadcasting and NBC Sports Group. So it's a very, very exciting portfolio of customers that we're working with. And specifically in terms of TV Everywhere, because we play such an active role in the authentication ecosystem, we're seeing that it's working very, very well, and we're also seeing that there's a lot of participation happening between the operators and the programmers, and there's an opportunity to help out with everyone here with kind of bringing that to the next step with home-based authentication and so forth. But that's kind of what we're focused on right now.
As a matter of background, Excedo has been around since 2004. Global presence, global leader in multi-screen front-end app development. We've done over 300 plus premium video services on more than 30 platforms. Our customers include Netflix, Showtime, HBO, Fox, WB, Disney, operators like DirecTV, Sky, Telstra, the MLB, NBA, a lot of premium music service, bringing them to the 10-foot experience. And we've worked in some capacity with each of the companies represented on this panel. There's 2 things that we solve for. One is systems integration, and the other one is fragmentation. There's a lot of technologies out there that comprise an end-to-end OTT solution, and we bring it all together at the front end. As the front-end app, all touch points run through us, so in addition to UI, UX, we're often taking the lead in systems integration. Things like OVP, DRM, Adobe Pass Auth, analytics from Omniture, Nielsen, ComScore, Google. You have ads, servers, FreeWheel, Adobe. You have discovery engines, you have commerce engines, a lot of things to piece together. So that's one of the things that we help solve for. The other one is fragmentation. This panel is about TV everywhere, and everywhere is a big word. And there's a lot of fragmentation, as we all know. So we have frameworks to help mitigate the pain of a multi-screen deployment, abstraction layers that help make it easier, more cost-effective, accelerate time to market for bringing all these different services onto all those different platforms. And that's really what we do as a company. In the last year, I would say there's a couple things we're proud of. I mentioned Showtime Anytime. The other one was Simpsons World. Helping FX stand that up was a pretty cool event. 25 seasons, 556 episodes. It was preceded by a Labor Day marathon, which I think catapulted FX into the #1 position with the millennial demographics. So we were happy to be a part of that.
That's great. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your overview. And I'm going to kind of segue off of that and start the conversation off about content. Because we know that World Cup, we know that March Madness, we know those big events are driving a lot of the TV Everywhere consumption. How do we take those tent poles, though, and trickle that success down into, everyday viewing for the consumer who's watching A&E and whatnot? How can we transfer that success over into everyday programming?
Sure. So I think the biggest issue is really around rights. If you look at the most successful TV Everywhere apps in the space, if you look at something like HBO Go, it's got a beautiful interface. But the reality is I think it's successful because it has every show, every episode. And in this new world where the viewer expects to be able to binge, to be able to get access to every single piece of content, I think where our industry has the most opportunity for growth with TV Everywhere is to ensure that when you open up any of our apps, that you are able to see as many seasons, episodes, and shows as possible, if not all of them. There's a lot of talk about, logging in and authenticating. I think that's a little bit of a red herring. Logging into a TV Everywhere experience is no different than logging into Facebook or any other digital property that you have to sign into. Yes, the first time it might be a little bit difficult. You have to interact. You have to track down your TV provider's account. But I do think that's really not the issue. I think it's about content. And we see that in our apps. People will authenticate at rates of 70, 80+% if they're trying to watch last night's premiere Lifetime movie. If they're trying to watch episodes of Dance Moms. Yes, I gave 2 Lifetime examples. There's incredible loyalty with that audience and that demographic, young girls primarily, and they will authenticate if the content is there.
Julius, I don't know if you can speak to the kids programming. We did some work on the kids UX this year because there are legal requirements that we have to meet for children's programming. But it's a unique audience, and they do things very differently than we do. Any insights that you can share on children's content that will continue to drive that customer?
Yeah, and I think I saw on the slide that you showed earlier some of the UI that you could find on our Watch Disney products. And I think educating kids as an audience on what the authentication sign-in process is a bit of a challenge. So as you saw, we have a video when you populate the MVPD picker page where it actually walks the kids through of, you need to ask for your parents' permission, you got to sign in, and you'll get access to all this great content that you really want to watch. And then even after they select the MVPD, then it's the co-branded login experience. So working with the MVPDs, trying to nail down that messaging, especially when we're talking about kids, we have to be very sensitive. So just reinforcing that and continuing to drive awareness and educate the consumer in the authentication process. And then once they're in, it's about showcasing the content that's available to them, but then it's also about leveraging our franchises, our hit series, and themed events like Monstober, Halloween-themed episodes and movies during the month of October. There's 25 Days of Christmas for ABC Family. So things like that definitely help drive usage and awareness.
Yeah. And it's important, too, that the parents are aware of what the kids are doing, but also that the kids have a little bit of autonomy, that they don't have to keep running back to mom and dad every time that they want to sign in. So let's, so we've talked about some adoption rates here, and there's lots of research out there and usage and awareness. But let's talk about the hurdles. Now, so Evan, you brought up the red flag. It's about rights. Is it all about rights, or is it about technology too? I'd like to hear it from a content provider side as well as from a technologist side on where you think the hurdles are for us to, achieve a 85-90% usage.
I'll start. So I think from our perspective, I do agree that we've definitely made strides in the authentication process, but I still think there's definitely room for improvement. So that's something that we've been focusing on. Like I mentioned, the video, the tutorial, the co-branded login experience, but then it's also continuing to dialogue with our partners on how can we reduce the friction in the authentication process as much as possible. So things like auto-enum authentication, like you touched on, things like social account linking or extending the time to live where the user doesn't have to sign in after a long period of time. Those are things that we're definitely exploring and things that we would love to have implemented to get people access to the content much quicker, because once they're in and they're coming back and they're watching the content. So I think that's a big focus of ours. World Cup, we had tremendous success there. It was the most streamed event ever, sporting event ever, 43.6 million hours of viewing in the entire tournament. But then, people, once they authenticate in there, the months July through September afterwards, we're seeing a significant year-over-year increase. So people are staying once they're authenticating. So to your point, the impact of a big event continuing to drive usage, that's just an example of that.
Yeah, and just to build off that, so at Freewheel, we're spending a lot of time looking at content and what content users are engaging with. I think to step back and think about an end user, part of it is, what is the reason for them to go engage in an authenticated environment? And what we've seen is that sports in many ways seeding that. So if you look at our live volume, for example, this is live volume on an Xbox or an iPad or on a mobile phone or on a tablet or a desktop. 80% of that volume is coming from live sports, and then followed by 11% for news, and then the rest is general entertainment. And what that says to us is that users are going to these environments for content that maybe isn't available in a linear environment. So we were talking about a lot of the network, the sports league channels on Watch ESPN. So let's say your team isn't playing in linear on the linear environment in your local channel. You can actually go and engage with any game that's playing on a Saturday if you're watching college football. So there's already a new experience that you can engage with in digital that's pushing people into these environments. And then they say, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. Now I'm going to go watch a primetime long-form show that I would have watched on TV. Maybe now I'll watch it on my iPad. So what we've generally seen is that a lot of it is content access that's beginning to bring users in. And once they're in the environment, they begin to discover a lot more.
Yeah, so A&E, A+E Networks doesn't, excuse me, have live sports, obviously. But I think what we see is our TV Everywhere apps are primarily used as second and third televisions in the home. How do we know that? So if we look at the data, about 88% of our usage is over a Wi-Fi network. Now, granted, you could access a Wi-Fi network out of the home, but 3G, 4G, LTE, all of that, it's 12% of our audience. And we really do believe that most people are, someone's using the primary television in the home or the second television, and folks are going and watching an episode of Pawn Stars or Bates Motel through the TV Everywhere app. So I think that, at least for us, it counters a little bit of this notion of TV Everywhere as, they're sitting on a bus during their commute to work. We find most of it in-house.
From the Adobe perspective, we see that tentpole events, we see that timely news, special content being available over IP-connected devices definitely is a significant driver. But technology plays a really significant role in being able to retain that audience once they arrive. What is the video playback experience? Is it as good, if not better, than television? in terms of accessing the content, finding what you're looking for, being able to play back at the position that you want to play back on. If you paused or walked away and resumed, do you have to watch the whole thing over again? Does the video stop working when it comes to ads? Do the same ads repeat over and over again? These are the types of technical problems that I think that we're really dealing with once you are able to actually get that audience to the experience. And so I think that from a technology perspective, we're seeing a lot of our customers and a lot of our prospects trying to solve these types of problems, so that once the audience gets there, you're able to retain it. And then you have that whole other question of how do you make money off of that, which feeds into the measurement conversation, which we had earlier.
Yeah, I would just echo. So if I list the first barrier as rights, the second is absolutely advertising. And it's funny, but I think seeing our growth with over-the-top, the ad market is lagging in the over-the-top space. We do a lot of work with Freewheel on trying to optimize on these platforms. But we literally need more advertisers right now to help deal with this issue of seeing, repeat ads. And it's the second biggest issue in my mind.
That's a great segue, gentlemen. So thank you very much, because we're going to talk a little bit about monetization and measurement. To kick this off, we have a very short video that Adobe has contributed, so we're going to watch that next.
The TV industry is in the middle of its digital transformation. Viewers are embracing the freedom of watching TV whenever, wherever, and however they want. The number of viewers watching online TV is growing fast, more than doubling in the past year alone. Online TV viewing shattered growth records in the second quarter of 2014. This record increase was fueled by a boost in the number of viewers, as well as a rise in the amount of content watched per viewer. Platforms and devices give viewers many options for viewing their favorite online TV content. Gaming consoles and other over-the-top devices made the greatest gain, taking online TV into the living room. iOS apps, however, continue to be the dominant access type for online TV, commanding over 50% of all authenticated videos. The popularity of live and on-demand sports content, the content pioneer in online TV, has ushered in opportunities for other types of content. Online TV viewing of movie network content saw 125% gain in the frequency of movies viewed. Meanwhile, popular episodic content from broadcast and cable networks saw online TV viewing frequency increase 81%. Online viewing of sports content also continues to grow, but at a slower pace than other content types. The media and entertainment industry is moving quickly into a digital world. Online TV is changing the way we consume content. From the living room to the office and on the go, people are now watching their favorite TV content everywhere. Today, TV is no longer just the device, it's also the content, and viewer expectations are rising. Providing the very best experiences across devices will give content providers, content distributors, and advertisers the best opportunity to benefit from this growing trend. TV is being viewed everywhere. Make sure your content is too. For more insights, download the full report.
So we heard earlier about the new partnership between Adobe and Nielsen and how they're looking at addressing cross-platform monetization and measurement. But I'd like to hear a bit more about how the technology companies are starting to work together more closely with companies like Freewheel to really help us understand how to monetize video in general, but also the cross-platform video. And what are the key things that you think need to happen over the next 6 to 12 months for us to be able to be successful at monetizing TV everywhere? Brian, can I start with you?
Sure. So I think cross-platform management is something that you hear a lot more these days, and it's important to start with what platforms are we talking about. So I think even if you're thinking just in purely digital IP, it's enough of a challenge. So you start with the desktop browser-based environment, which is the easiest to measure. So when we look at our volume, 3/4 of our volume is on desktop, even though we know all the usage is going to mobile and OTT devices. And why is that? If you look at a mobile phone, mobile phone can now be measured by Nielsen OCR, which is a good step. But the mobile phone, the mobile environment, the app environment is hard to measure. Same thing when you get into connected TV environments. It's even more difficult to understand, in particular, who the users are, to understand things like purchase behavior. Did they buy the product for the ad that they just saw? Very hard to do that in a lot of these new digital environments. So a lot of what the ecosystem needs to do, just starting in the digital world, is begin to figure out measurements that work across all of those and to find ways to follow a user across all those. I think something like Facebook is the first chance you really see that, because you're usually logged into your Facebook credentials. So that's the first way that you can really track a user across every environment. But just digital alone is very challenging. At Freewheel, we're thinking in the digital space, but we're also now really thinking about new environments. So the first one would be set-top box, which is, I think most programmers will tell you, a huge opportunity for new inventory. But then the next step beyond that is the holy grail, which is the linear TV environment. It's a $70 billion a year business compared to roughly $5 billion a year for digital video. So I think ultimately when you talk about linear television, you're talking about a business that's been doing things the same way for about 50 years. And when I say doing things, I mean scheduling ads. They're plug and playing ads. It's not dynamic ad insertion the way we all understand it in digital. So over time, cross-platform management is going to mean bringing set-top box, digital, and linear all together across one unified currency in a way that all these different tech stacks can talk to each other. That's not 6 months out. I think that's a lot more, many more months out. But I think that's where we ultimately get. I think in the immediate term, it'll be about really solving the digital challenges.
I definitely agree with all of those points. I would add that 2015, I think, is going to be a very interesting year for television. I think that the shift in ratings for certain cable networks right now, and viewers moving to over-the-top or digital content distribution is going to accelerate certain things, and what that certain thing is IP-based video playback viewing distribution. Also combine that with the major cable companies in the United States shifting their infrastructure to be IP-based as well as QAM-based, which means you're going to see Comcast and Time Warner Cable and other companies out there, cable companies out there, begin to distribute their video on demand, actually using the same protocols that our internet-based television is using. So what this does is, outside of the set-top box, the traditional cable satellite set-top box, is it definitely creates significant measurement challenges. And so that's actually, that's one of Adobe's really core focuses for 2015. And we really believe that 2015 is going to be about the Buddy Box, the Apple TV, the Roku, the Chromecast, streaming sticks, Fire TVs, Xbox, PlayStation, etc. People are going to increase their consumption of video on that big screen in their on the television set. That's going to create significant measurement challenges, and there's definitely going to be an increase of linear distribution over these IP-based channels, and how does that affect the ad world from a linear perspective? I think is going to be a really, really big question. The linear ad world has been working the same way for a few decades, and video on demand is, in terms of set-top box, cable, satellite, has barely scratched the surface in terms of revenue monetization opportunity thus far. So I think 2015, from an advertising monetization perspective, we're going to see how the confluence of how IP technologies can potentially improve or change the traditional way of operating television. This can create fear, it can create challenges, but I personally think it's a huge opportunity. And what that opportunity is on the supply side, specifically for programmers and operators, we all have the ability to potentially eliminate waste. You know, if you have an ad targeted to females 18 to 24, why does that have to be shown to a male? And we have an opportunity to move to census-based audience measurement and targeting, and so this is, I think this is what we're going to begin to focus on, and I think that the trends that you just saw in the report, and specifically the major rise with OTT devices, I think you're going to begin to see how technology can empower the television companies that exist today to embrace their own future and to be able to make sure that what happened to print does not happen to them, but also to create new advertising products and to optimize their inventory. So I think it's going to be a very exciting time from an advertising perspective.
From app development perspective, front-end app development perspective, I would approach this more from CapEx. So you have to make sure that your initial investment, which is quite substantial, has a return. And it's difficult because, we're just now getting to the point where we're starting to monetize. So of course we integrate all the technologies and analytics and ad serving technologies, et cetera. But at Excedo, we're developing frameworks that help to normalize, some of the fragmentation that's out there. So we're making a concerted effort to invest in something we call XDK, which helps take some of the nuances between the various platforms, some of the commonalities into an abstraction layer within specific technology verticals like HTML5, Android platforms, and also within certain groups of products like Microsoft, whereby the code base from Xbox One can be shared with my Windows 8. So helping to realize some economies of scale, mitigate some of the CapEx, and hopefully, improve ROI for getting the business out there. And then also, to echo some of the statements on operating the business, it's very complex. We have customers with 100+ clients. I'm sure Disney has a lot of clients out there on dozens of platforms, and it's very hard to manage. So app management systems are something that we're building so that we can actually have our customers operate their business in a way that's not cost prohibitive, because managing hundreds of apps on dozens of platforms can be cost prohibitive.
So I'm going to flip the question now to our two content providers on the stage, because we've heard for years that you don't get enough data to really understand what the consumer's doing. So what would the holy grail of data and information be for you to get from any device, set-top box, mobile device, desktop? Go for it, Evan. I could see you're chomping at the bit. Yeah.
Look, we still don't have a direct relationship with the consumer. The authentication process still happens through the TV provider, and so there's a trove of data. That would be the holy grail, to have that data and that relationship directly with the consumer. That's my short answer.
Yeah, I think just to echo that, I think that there are opportunities if we had access to that level of data to better target or better utilize the dynamic ad insertion capabilities that the internet platform allows. So I would just echo his comments.
Okay. Could I ask a question?
Can I stop you?
I don't know, but it's related. So my question would be, right now content is used as a proxy for audience. And when you sell advertising and you're currently using content a lot as a proxy for audience, specifically in traditional television, do you see a desire to be able to just directly target to the audience, provided that technology would support it on certain platforms?
Yeah, so I should qualify my last answer so no one jumps to any conclusions. We have a very successful business and a great partnership with TV providers. And we love the way that system works, and we actually think it's pretty good for consumers. So I don't want anyone to jump to any conclusions based on what I said. So I think to answer your question, obviously anyone that runs a business would like more data, and you asked what is the holy grail, that's what I was answering. But no, we're not going to do anything to change the paradigm of the business in a way that's going to hurt us or the consumers.
Yeah, we're totally focused on supporting the current multi-channel ecosystem. Our watch products reflect that. The way we monetize is DAI, and I think we're very happy with the progress that we made. When we first launched, DAI was not a perfect ad solution, but we've made significant strides. And just watching the game, Monday Night Football game last night, I remember it was almost a seamless ad experience where I couldn't even tell if these were dynamically inserted or if these are ads that are flowing through from linear because there was no slate. And I think when we first launched, that slate was omnipresent, and it wasn't really a good experience. So I think we've made tremendous strides. I think in terms of going across all platforms, I think to your point, there are definitely challenges there, but we're continuing to make progress. And this past summer, I mean, we launched on Apple TV and Roku for Watch ESPN, so we're happy about that as well.
Well, and the research does tell us that with TV Everywhere, the partnership between the cable companies and the content providers, their perception and their value perception is much more increased. So I think it's definitely a win-win. Let me open it up to the audience. We have microphones, or if you want to shout your question out, I'll repeat it for you. But would love to get some interaction going here with the group. I'll do a filler here real quick. 4K television and TV Everywhere. How soon?
Right now, we're just experimenting with it. We're testing with it. We're trying to arm our production trucks with 4K capabilities. And when the industry demands it, we'll be ready for it. Nothing beyond that at this point.
Okay. All right, sir.
Michael Schroeder with Microsoft. Question about two scenarios I'd like to get your outlook about when consumers can see this. The first one is I get on a plane to San Francisco, I turn on the screen, and I can log in with my TV Anywhere credentials. The second scenario is my child gets into the back seat of a friend's car. I am a cable subscriber. My child is in my family. When can that child log in and watch his TV shows on Disney or the other channels that I've authorized him to see? When can we see those two scenarios?
We may not be the right people to answer that question. I mean, we are prepared for those scenarios today. The first scenario you outlined, I think, has to do with streaming issues in airlines, if I'm not correct, if not mistaken. And the second scenario has to do with, Wi-Fi access and penetration in cars. But, our app would travel to an airplane, and you can log into our TV Everywhere apps or to a car today.
Same with us. Our apps you can access in-home or out of the home, but your quality of experience will definitely depend on your internet connectivity. Go in-flight internet is not going to, not going to get the best experience there.
Okay.
Thank
I think
you.
that's it. Did we have a question? Okay.
Yes. Much has been made of the difference between going to a multi-channel video provider's platform to watch the experience versus the individual content providers, in the case of Disney, having their own content, ESPN having their own login window, the HBO Go. What's your general feelings about the difference, particularly from the viewer experience of having to go in some cases to the provider's platform directly to view something versus going directly to the ESPN or the A&E login?
Our perspective is, if the viewer is going there, we want to be there as well. So if that's an MVPD partner site or app, that's totally fine with us. I think there are advantages to owning the access point, but we want to serve our fans and users wherever they go. So whether it be Xfinity or Verizon or Watch ESPN, as long as the people are viewing it, we definitely want to be there and serve those fans.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, whether you go to a TV provider's digital platform or to ours, that's great for the industry and for the business model. That said, it's obviously more beneficial to us if they're in the History or the A&E or the Lifetime app, where we're surrounded by our content versus competitors' content.
Yeah, I always refer back to the analogy of a department store versus a boutique store. So I love 7 Jeans, and I can go to a department store to get that, or I can go to a 7 store to get that. But in either scenario, I want to be able to get my 7 genes. So same thing. It's like wherever the customer is, we want to be there.
Yeah, and just something to add on that. I mean, I think as we're looking at a lot of data through Freewheel, we actually see a lot of volume now coming through, a Time Warner Cable or an Xfinity or, DirecTV app. And I think a lot of this has to do with thinking about user behavior, because I think there's plenty of reasons for a user to engage directly with the A&E or an ESPN app. But there's also a segment of users who maybe haven't discovered your content yet. And what we're seeing is that a lot of the MVPD apps play that role in discovery, and that you can look at a whole genre of content and find a new show that you weren't looking at before, very similar to the way that, the old school way of flipping through an EPG. So I think that both are going to play a role and will exist, because we've seen a lot more programmer-specific apps this year, but also a lot more MVPD apps. So as long as we'll have good user experiences, I think both will exist for a long time.
Beth.
Hi, this is for the content folks. Based on what you were saying about your conference channels, I'm just curious if you guys are going to be launching sort of new mini channels in this environment, and what goes through your minds in terms of how you decide, should we launch these new products? What do you consider to make that work?
Yeah, and just to clarify, when I said we launched conference channels, we weren't launching a new network per se in the Watch ESPN experience. We were just curating the content that already airs on our family of networks. So if I look at the ACC conference channel on Watch ESPN and Apple TV, you'll be able to find all the ACC-related content that's airing on the ESPN family of networks. So I think that's just a way of curating content where it makes it easier for consumers to find and access content that they may enjoy. And we'll constantly take a look at that to see what else makes sense in terms of creating more UI enhancements that curate content, bring content to the top where we feel it resonates with the fan.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a trend in the industry to see what additional content content providers can provide to customers with sort of additional services. But, I think, again, the system we have right now works pretty well. And I think it works well for content providers, TV providers, and consumers. I think there's a lot of sort of incorrect speculation about what a direct-to-consumer world would look like, where people think that they would have the exact same choices at these sort of lower price points. And I think that may not be the case. So again, I do think companies are looking at how they can provide additional content, additional sort of services and channels. But I'm not sure that the existing ecosystem is suddenly going to dramatically change in some of the ways people envision.
Yes, hi, good morning. My name is Zane Vella from Watchwith. And I have a question about DAI. So you said clearly digital ad insertion has come a really long way over the last couple of years, really quickly. The user experience has definitely improved. The tools have come a long way. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about what you think defines the state of the art of DAI right now in terms of programmer tools. I think what we're seeing from a lot of our customers is a desire to be able to control the pods better. And I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about that, if your companies are working in that area, or if you think there's opportunity, or if that should really just stay kind of random.
I'll take a first stab at answering that. In terms of DAI, I think the state of the art right now is something called ad stitching, which has been the big focus for 2014, I think, which is going from the way that the video industry has inserted ads since like 2008 or whatever, which was using 2 players, and it was somewhat clunky and prone to errors. And even the dual player ad insertion model still exists sometimes today on like iOS experiences. And you can, a programmer or operator could experience still 20% error rates with dual player for a video on demand asset. So the industry's really moved to ad stitching, and that's otherwise known as server-side ad insertion or manifest file manipulation. There's a lot of different ways with which you can accomplish that, but it's essentially keyframe accurate ability to insert one or more ads, essentially replicating a television-like experience, and it works really well across devices. So I'd say that that's definitely the bleeding edge. And right now, you know, I'm familiar with WatchWith, and you know, right now I think that one of the challenges that with multi-device proliferation that's trying to be solved is how do you communicate information that goes beyond just the linear ads that are stitched within a stream, whether that's for a non-linear experience or whether that is for something that is wrapped around the video, or, you know, if you're to look at like a Bloomberg television experience on just your set-top box, you'd notice that only the video takes up like 2/3 of the screen, and there's like information showing up there. Well, there's an opportunity with ad insertion and specifically IP streaming to decorate the stream with metadata, time-coded metadata that you have the ability to enhance the experience with. So I'd say that might come in the future, but at least that's the way I'd answer that question.
I really wasn't, I'm sorry, just if I could just follow on that. I wasn't actually looking for the plug, but thank you. I actually meant more the actual scheduling of the content of the ad pods, like of an ad pod. Is that happening? It seems like everyone was excited to be able to insert an ad and deliver it and get paid, which is great. Okay. But as far as the actual pod itself, like a traffic system, do you see that on the horizon?
Yeah.
It's happening.
Yeah, right. So just to speak a little bit to that, and just sticking on long form and mid-rolls. So I think let's start from the basics. So in general, we see at Freewheel 4 ads per mid-roll pod, which is pretty good on average. But I think when you look at linear, you might see 6 in a pod. So the question is always, well, okay, let's get that up to 6. I think what happened in the world of digital is a lot more flexibility because it's not a linear stream where everyone has to see the same pod experience. So what a lot of our clients are doing right now is experimenting with changing the pod structure. So usually the cue points are the same. You know, the mid-rolls come at the same spot, but there'll be a different number of ads in each pod. So on maybe the show that was out 3 or 4 days ago, you'll see a full TV load, so you'll see 6 ads. But for library content, you might see 1 or 2, or maybe even no ads. And sometimes in serial dramas, you pack the later episodes in the season because you know the user's invested. So there are different ways to begin creating an experience and loading up the content with ads to bring your users back over time. The question I think for long term is, can you do that dynamically? So maybe when a user comes up, you say, oh, this user's been around a couple times on our site. Let's give him fewer ads in this pod to reward him for his good behavior and coming back to our site, right? I think that's the long term of it. And that's just in a purely DAI environment. I think where this space is going next is the blending of linear scheduling and DAI. And there's a couple reasons I say that. One is back to live. Live is a huge growing environment in digital. It's now 20% of our total volume. And I think as people authenticate more and everything we've been saying today, you're going to see a lot more people watching a linear TV channel on their iPad. Then you get down to the issues of you got to fill 3-minute breaks or 2-minute breaks. So I think where the industry eventually needs to get is that there may be certain reasons that you want to schedule Coke in position 1, then Geico, and then DAI the rest of the pod. And I think that's the ultimate experience because you can get an advertiser what they want. They want to be in the first position. They want to be seen by every person. But you can also do DAI to start serving, you know, your 18 to 24 males with a different ad than the, 25 to 34 females. So I think there's going to be a combination of both, and I think also experimenting with that user experience in digital is also where we're going.
Okay, That's the last question. Before we go, 5 words or less. Next year, this time, biggest tech advancement, starting at the end of the row there. 5 words or less.
Let's dumb things down and simplify.
Okay. 5 words or less.
Connected IP television.
Okay. Julius?
Auto in-home authentication everywhere.
Okay. Brian?
No one said this. Programmatic.
And Evan, last but not least.
Ad agencies buy OTT regularly.
Okay. Thank our panelists. Great job, gentlemen. Thank you very much.